Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome to day 352 of the Chronological Read Through the Bible. Well, yesterday I addressed that I wanted to focus today's commentary on a word which we find repeated in chapter 4. And it really starts out this concept in chapter 3. Let me lay a little bit of a foundation. Hebrews is really laying out for the Hebrew people. Here is your history. Here are the doctrinal beliefs of the past, even scriptural teachings from the past. And here's how Christ fulfills those. Here's the lesson that we are to learn from our past history, if you will. And in this point of chapter 3, where I'm going to pick up, laying the foundation here is this again is addressing the Hebrews' disbelief in God's protection and God providing for them. The people had erected the golden calf, which if you go back, I'm pretty sure that when I mentioned the golden calf before, I said this is something that's going to stick with Israel throughout their history, that God will continue to repeat to them and remind them of their sin of worshiping the golden calf. And of course, they would end up doing this again, all over again, in northern, in Israel, when the kingdom divided. I say northern, when it was Judea and then Israel, and of course, under the rule of Jeroboam. Jeroboam sets up two golden calves for the people to worship. So the golden calf incident really was an issue of lack of trust. And let's see a part of what is said here in Hebrews chapter 3, verse 11. And I think it's speaking of two things. I think it's speaking of their lack of disbelief and that God could give them victory in taking and seizing the promised land, but also that they quickly turned away from him after being set free from slavery in Egypt. As I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest. Take care, brethren, that there not be any one of you an evil, unbelieving heart that falls away from the living God. So I touched on that part at verse 12 yesterday. But in verse 11, we have this word rest. And that's a word that we see repeated over and over again in chapter 4, speaking of entering into the Lord's rest. Well, there are three different types of rest that we have addressed here. There is the rest which comes from salvation, a rest that you are secured, you are saved, you're in Christ. And then we have the rest which means rest, victory in the midst of trials. Have you ever noticed there's some people that can go through the most pressing, the most horrific trial, and yet they seem to be at peace? You normally only find that among believers. If it's of somebody in the world, you might wonder what's happening there. But you can find believers at times who are in the moment, it's a difficult situation, but you see that they still have peace, that their heart is at ease during that time. And then the third rest, which we have, is a future eternal rest, a heavenly rest, if you will. And that could seem a little bit like it's connected with salvation, but salvation goes far beyond just the heavenly rest. It's a rest that you have right now, a peace of mind that you are secure in Christ. Always remember this. We're told that he's able to save completely those who come to him in faith. So you've come to the Lord in faith. You can now rest secure with the helmet of salvation on, knowing that you are secure in him. So I just wanted to re-emphasize that here. Well, if you go through chapter 4, you're going to find, and in my Bible, I've circled each time the word rest appears from chapter 3 through chapter 4. You will see this concept of rest referred to a number of times. There's the rest to God's eternal spiritual rest, which believers can experience right now and it's also a deeper rest for the future. And then there is the warning for believers to learn from Israel's failure in the wilderness. And I think this is where right now, we need to learn that Israel, God's telling them, go up and possess the land. And they're like, but we're like grasshoppers in our own sight. And oh, the people of the land, they're so much greater and more powerful than we are. You see, they're putting it back on themselves. They're thinking that they are responsible for their own salvation. How quickly did they forget what God did for them in Egypt? How He literally embarrassed the Egyptian gods and the Egyptians, saying, your gods are powerless. How He then took the firstborn male of each Egyptian home. They quickly forgot the power of God. They quickly forgot how He parted the Red Sea and drowned Pharaoh's army in it. And how the Lord had already provided for them at that point. No, they looked to the promised land and said, God might could have done all that back there, but He can't do this. And we do that all the time when we don't trust for the Lord to provide or the Lord to lead us through a difficult situation, whether it's with a family member or whether it's with yourself. The Lord is there to walk with you. We need to trust Him, because as we trust in Him, we enter into a deeper rest and a peace that comes within our heart. So the author emphasizes that rest, but that rest is only with faith. We must have faith that He will give us a victory over the fears and a victory over the doubt, a victory over our own lack of motivation even at times. We need to have a pure rest that can only come from Christ. God rested on the seventh day, didn't He? Not that He was tired, but that He was basking in the glory of His creation. He did so as an example to us. But today, so few people take a day of rest. So few people say, I want to just enjoy God's creation. I want to enjoy what God's done. I want to enjoy what God's done in my life. Some people are still so busy running a race, and not the race of faith, but the race of the world, that they don't stop to enjoy what God's done. As a missionary, I have to trust the Lord for a lot of things. I have to trust the Lord for communication. Even if the place where I'm at is a land that speaks my own language, it doesn't mean that our customs or culture is going to be the same. In Nigeria, for instance, if you ask somebody, if you said, is that your home over there, you never pointed your finger, because in their culture, that was putting a curse on their home. You pointed with your chin. You had to remember these things. But I had to trust for the Lord to help me remember that. You never received or gave anything with your left hand. You did everything, all these common everyday actions was done with your right hand. And though a simple thing, I'm using it as a description to say, you have to trust the Lord to lead and guide you in all activities, even the small things. Those things, though you might think that they are small and comical, if I was to have handed somebody in Nigeria an object with my left hand, that would have been a grievous insult and would have caused an incident, really. I want us to learn to walk in the rest that He's given us, the peace of mind that He's given us. We are a simple people, really, but yet complex at the same time. And we need to learn to let go of our fears and trust in His daily provision for us. I know it can be difficult. I've had to learn to turn my finances over to the Lord. I'm fully relying upon the Lord touching other people's hearts to give to the ministry and the work which I have going on here in Brazil and what I have happening in Mississippi as well. Let's trust Him today. I know He'll take care of you if you cast your burdens on Him. Brothers and sisters, I hope and pray that everything's going well. Until tomorrow, God bless.